Initially, my story may seem like a typical tale of discovering infidelity. I'm a 27-year-old guy who was engaged for 6 months. I started noticing my fiance's distant behavior, her absence at odd times, and her excuses for lack of sleep. Then, I stumbled upon the texts. It turned out she had been having an affair with a married man who has children. To make matters worse, this guy was actually giving my fiancé advice on how to cheat, as if it were acceptable. All the evidence was right there in the text messages. This all unfolded in late spring, just before our wedding, which was scheduled for this summer. However, I had no hesitation. There was no way that wedding was going to happen. I was done. Luckily, I work for a large company that has plenty of job opportunities. I interviewed and secured a position in a location I've always wanted to live in. I informed my landlord, since my fiancé was living with me in the apartment and the lease was solely in my name. I proceeded to file for an unlawful detainer to legally evict her from the premises. I got myself a new phone plan with a new number. The plan was to end the relationship on a Thursday, with my last day in the apartment set for Friday. I had movers scheduled to assist me in moving out. Talk about perfect timing. And wouldn't you know it, she had a girls' weekend getaway planned for that very same weekend. I even arranged to have a sheriff present at my place for 4 hours to ensure everything went smoothly. It cost me $200, but it was worth it. In my county, we can hire off-duty sheriffs for assistance. Here's what happened that Thursday. I FedExed screenshots of the incriminating messages to both her parents and the wife of the guy she was cheating with. I included respectful notes with the packages. Her parents had already spent a lot of money on the wedding, which had to be canceled at the last minute. I felt a bit bad about that. Well, not really. I turned off my old cell phone service and met with a deputy to explain the situation. I presented the court documents as evidence. The deputy was understanding and cool about it. When she came home from work, I told her it was over. I asked her to pack her things and leave. I realized I wasn't ready for marriage, and understandably, she was upset and emotional. With the help of the deputy, we managed to expedite the process, although it took a few hours. Her tears eventually turned into anger that evening. By blocking her on every platform and cutting off contact, I made it clear that it was over. By Friday afternoon, I was on the road. It's been almost 3 months now, and I've embraced a new job, a new environment, and new acquaintances. I've had minimal contact with most people from that past relationship. Our mutual friends inform me that she's not coping well. The friends I do keep in touch with now know the full story. Her parents reached out to mine, apologized, and requested my contact information, but my dad respectfully declined to share it. Instead, he suggested that I reach out to them out of respect. Her sister, whom I had forgotten to block, messaged me on Facebook. She expressed understanding for my actions, but felt that I could have handled the situation better. Many people mentioned her private message initially, and after reflecting on their comments, I realized she might have been referring to how I handled things with my ex as well. During my long drive in the days that followed, I felt like a coward, avoiding confronting my ex and telling her the truth. I simply didn't want to deal with it at the time. However, thanks to the comments and feedback, I feel reassured about my actions. I'm planning to reach out to her parents soon. I just need to find a phone and some privacy. I'm unsure about what to say. Regarding the text messages exchanged between my ex and the other person involved, I had substantial evidence, including 12 pictures of the text conversations. There was no doubt that they had been intimate. The comments made by the other person, justifying cheating, deeply troubled me. Similarly, my ex's comments were unsettling, especially her nonchalance towards infidelity. I didn't reach out to the other person's spouse. Instead, I sent both letters and screenshots via FedEx, which were successfully delivered. Part of me wants to contact her, but another part thinks that with the evidence I sent, there's no way he can escape accountability unless she's in complete denial. If that's the case, contacting her would be futile. I've had conversations with mutual friends who mentioned she's struggling, but I prefer not to delve into the details and change the topic. My social life is quite fulfilling, with many friends from my apartment complex and work. After reaching out to my ex's parents and having a conversation with my father-in-law, I offered an apology, expressing regret for sending them the pictures of the messages. Overall, it was a constructive conversation. I aimed to convey the rationale behind my decision and show them respect. However, my father-in-law didn't dwell on that and instead focused on how I was adjusting to my new job and other aspects of my life. He offered words of encouragement and support, steering clear of specific discussions about my ex. Similarly, when talking to a friend from my previous location, we didn't delve into details about my ex's situation. It appears that my ex has moved back home and quit her job, as per my Facebook stalking of the other person's wife. Her recent motivational posts, with supportive comments, hint that she may be considering leaving the other guy. While I can't confirm this, there weren't many similar posts before. As for me, I'm thoroughly enjoying my new job and gradually making new friends. Although I'm not ready to start dating yet, I feel optimistic about meeting someone when the time is right. Overall, there's nothing overly exciting happening at the moment. I appreciate the questions and support I've received regarding how I handled the breakup with my ex. It's worth clarifying that I discovered her infidelity long before I officially ended the relationship. Those days following the revelation were a blur for me, and at times, they still feel that way. I struggled to eat, focus at work, or sleep. I was barely functioning. It was particularly tough not to confront her about it. However, one evening when she came home very late, it was a turning point for me. Watching her act normal, asking about me while knowing it was all a lie, felt like a betrayal. It's challenging to articulate, but she went from being the love of my life to someone I wouldn't be interested in, even if she were the last woman on earth. I wasn't myself during that time, and I believe she could sense it. Despite her occasional affection and concern, it was difficult to mask my true feelings when she seemed unaffected and perfectly fine without any sleep. Thankfully, neither of us initiated any further actions, which, in retrospect, solidified my resolve. During the actual breakup, I experienced a whirlwind of emotions. The police officer present was incredibly supportive and provided me with guidance that I desperately needed at the time. I shared enough of my story to garner some sympathy, or at least it felt that way. Sensing my distress, the officer advised me to keep my words to a minimum and assured me that he would handle the situation with care and professionalism. At that point, I simply wanted closure, and the officer's demeanor offered some semblance of comfort amidst the chaos. He exhibited both kindness and firmness, striking a delicate balance that undoubtedly stemmed from his vast experience in handling similar situations. While they engaged in conversation, I retreated to the balcony, feigning absorption in my phone to mask my inner turmoil. To provide context, our relationship spanned 3 years, characterized by a deep and profound love. However, as time passed, cracks began to surface, primarily stemming from differences in our approaches to everyday life. Our disagreements, once sporadic, became increasingly frequent as she appeared disinterested in mundane tasks and responsibilities. Despite my attempts to express my concerns, she struggled to reciprocate, opting instead to nod along in agreement, further exacerbating the growing chasm between us. Nonetheless, her efforts to address these issues offered a glimmer of hope, and for a while it seemed as though we might weather the storm together. Several months ago, during an intimate conversation, she broached the subject of exploring love beyond our relationship. Her revelation struck a chord, particularly given the timing. It coincided with my birthday celebration. The ensuing revelation, that she had confided in another individual about our relationship woes and engaged in explicit exchanges, left me reeling with a potent mix of betrayal and hurt. Despite my vehement protests, she persisted until I made it unequivocally clear that such actions were intolerable. While she relented, our marriage rapidly unraveled, culminating in heated arguments and, eventually, her reluctant agreement to pursue a divorce. In the aftermath, she withdrew, citing the need for space, ostensibly spending time with friends. However, my discovery of her online dating profile shattered any remaining illusions of reconciliation. Though she claimed innocence, insisting it was harmless interaction, subsequent revelations of her exchanging contact details with multiple individuals shattered any semblance of trust or hope for reconciliation. Upon discovering the notifications on her phone, I came to the realization that she had continued communicating with these individuals while we shared a living space. It dawned on me that we had essentially agreed to pursue a divorce, but I had hoped she would at least have the decency to wait until she found alternative accommodation. Despite our decision, we maintained a semblance of civility during those 2 weeks as we coexisted. However, her presence at home was fleeting. She would hastily return, shower, apply makeup, and then spend the night elsewhere, purportedly with friends. However, it later transpired that she had not met any friends during those absences. Instead, she engaged in intimate relations with 5 different Marines and exchanged explicit messages with 3 other individuals. She relinquished all remnants of our intimacy, cuddling, kissing, engaging in explicit conversations, going on dates, exchanging compliments, and even sharing explicit imagery. She believed our relationship had reached its end, whereas I had underestimated the severity of the situation, assuming she simply needed space. However, a gut feeling one evening prompted me to scrutinize her phone, uncovering evidence of her indiscretions. The revelation devastated me, and despite her initial attempts to downplay the extent of her actions, she eventually admitted to engaging in physical intimacy with multiple individuals. The realization that she had been intimate with all 5 of them and exchanged explicit imagery with several others deeply wounded me. Her rationale, albeit understandable to some extent, did little to assuage my hurt. She sought attention and validation, acknowledging her prowess in the bedroom, and believed our relationship had run its course. While I empathize with her perspective, I cannot condone her behavior. Moreover, learning that she had already lined up these encounters on the very day she deemed our relationship over compounded my anguish. To some extent, her feelings were justified. I had grown increasingly frustrated with her significant weight gain, lack of communication, and reluctance to address minor issues. Despite my efforts to suggest couples counseling on numerous occasions, she adamantly refused. She has since severed all ties with the individuals involved and has limited her interactions to her family. On the other hand, I've been ailing physically, which has been made worse by the agony of thinking about their adventures together. I went to the doctor for dehydration after suffering from excruciating nausea for 4 days. Just thinking about their behavior makes me feel awful, so I go to counseling to protect my mental health. The very idea of another man sharing intimate moments with my wife, preceding and following my own encounters with her, fills me with revulsion. Despite her attempts to cleanse herself physically, the repugnance lingers. She distanced herself from me halfway through those 2 weeks, as if I were an obstacle in her path. She professed that these men found her attractive, a sentiment she implied I did not share. As a Marine, the knowledge that 5 other servicemen, albeit of lower rank, engaged in physical intimacy with my wife is a wound that cuts deep into my soul. It wasn't just casual encounters, it was a culmination of foreplay, roughness, and all conceivable acts of intimacy. Reflecting on the timeline of events, the only instance of indiscretion I can definitively label as cheating occurred when she exchanged explicit messages with a man a few months prior. Subsequently, upon mutual agreement that our marriage had reached its terminus, she embarked on a spree of extramarital affairs and digital flirtations. However, it is worth noting that these transgressions occurred before any formal divorce proceedings were initiated. Thus, I find myself grappling with the question of fairness in holding her accountable for actions she believed were permissible given our perceived separation. In an attempt to alleviate my anguish and perhaps seek solace in retaliation, I contemplated arranging a one-night stand for myself, albeit unsuccessfully. The furthest I ventured was receiving a fleeting compliment from a stranger, a stark contrast to the explicit words and deeds of my wife. These revelations have inflicted irreparable damage to my self-esteem and confidence, particularly upon learning of her attraction to these other men and her purported enjoyment of certain aspects of their encounters over our own intimate moments. The crux of my dilemma lies in whether our relationship can be salvaged through counseling and concerted efforts, or if the specter of her infidelities will forever cast a pall over our union. While she expresses remorse and a desire to mend our fractured bond, I cannot shake the persistent sickness that grips me at the thought of her actions. She reassures me of her unwavering commitment and acknowledges my struggles, yet the scars of betrayal run deep. In seeking guidance from our respective families, I encounter conflicting opinions. While my parents advocate for severing all ties, hers maintain a glimmer of hope for reconciliation, albeit tempered by an understanding of the gravity of the situation. As I reflect on the tumultuous journey of our marriage, it becomes increasingly evident that its demise was an inevitability. Despite our efforts to salvage what remained, the chasm between us proved insurmountable. Our foray into counseling and subsequent interventions only served to underscore the irreconcilable differences that had long simmered beneath the surface. As I navigate the aftermath of our dissolution, I am reminded of the wisdom in heeding the counsel of others, even when it conflicts with one's deepest desires. In spite of my relentless efforts to salvage what remained of our relationship, my ex-wife persisted in communicating with those same individuals, like persistent pests that refused to leave. Every few days, I stumbled upon her exchanges with different men, each interaction adding to my growing frustration and disappointment. Joey's flattering remarks about her adeptness at leading them on, coupled with Tyler's eager anticipation of their next rendezvous, served as constant reminders of her betrayal. One morning, driven by a gnawing suspicion, I unlocked her phone and was met with the unsettling sight of her exchanging declarations of love with Matt. That moment marked the breaking point for me. The idea of her abandoning our marriage after everything we had been through was simply too much to bear. I confronted her, giving her an ultimatum. She had until the end of the day, while I was at work, to pack her belongings and leave for good. Returning home to find the apartment empty brought a sense of relief, albeit a temporary one, as we were still legally bound by marriage. Fueled by bitterness, I sought solace in one-night stands, hoping to numb the pain of betrayal. It was a petty endeavor, I admit, but one driven by hurt and anger. However, fate had other plans. Despite my attempts to distance myself, I found myself entangled with my unfaithful wife once again. Our encounters became a twisted cycle of temporary solace, each one further exacerbating the pain and resentment that had come to define our relationship. Ironically, she displayed jealousy over my newfound exploits, failing to recognize the irony of her own actions. However, this ill-fated liaison came with consequences for both of us. While I miraculously emerged unscathed from my reckless behavior, she was not as fortunate, though her infection was thankfully treatable. With our lease terminated and my military contract coincidentally ending, I saw an opportunity for a fresh start. I made the decision to move across the country, leaving behind the shadows of our tumultuous past. The prospect of starting anew was daunting at first, but I soon found solace in the unfamiliarity of my new surroundings. Immersing myself in my work, I relished the sense of independence and freedom that came with it. Gradually, I began to find my footing, forging new friendships and connections along the way. It was amidst this fresh start that I crossed paths with my current fiancée, defying my earlier skepticism about finding love again. She embodies everything I could hope for in a partner: patient, loving, and genuinely compatible. Together, we've built a life that feels harmonious and fulfilling. Reflecting on the tumultuous journey from the depths of my divorce to the serenity of my current life, I'm struck by the profound transformation that has taken place. Financially stable, professionally fulfilled, and deeply in love, I've emerged from the wreckage of my past stronger and happier than ever before. My divorce, once a source of anguish, now serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of finding happiness amidst adversity.